Welcome to this meeting of Inverclyde Council's Petition Committee. This meeting is being held remotely and also in person and will be filmed and recorded for live and subsequent broadcast available through the Council's website. The Council is a data controller under the General Data Protection Regulations and the Data Protection Act 2018. We broadcast and record Council meetings to fulfil our public task obligation to enable members of the public to observe the democratic process. Data collected during the process will be retained in accordance with Council's published policies available through the Council's website. Members of the Council are reminded that they should follow the Council's established meeting protocols, including around the use of the chat facility, and that comments made in the chat facility are visible to all participants in the meeting, which may include members of the public who have also received invites to the meeting. Thank you very much, everybody, for your attendance here this afternoon. Item 1 on the agenda, apologies, substitutions and declarations of interest. Diane?
We have apologies from Councillor Curley, with Councillor Reynolds substituting, and Councillor McCabe. We will now move to a roll call before proceeding to the declarations of interest. Can the following members please indicate they're present at the meeting either in person or remotely? Councillor Brooks.
In chamber.
Councillor Cassidy.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Daisley.
Present in the chamber.
Provost Mackenzie.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Reynolds.
Present in the chamber.
Are there any declarations of interest?
I should probably say that I used to be part of a team in the pharmacy team that works in the Glasgow Health Centre before I retired. I still do ad hoc work for the Health Board. I don't think this would stop me from being part of that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Before we start, I think we have Dr. Thorman here from Port Glasgow Health Centre, who will propose our petition shortly. I think it would be proper that, in order to familiarise yourself with the proceedings here, that we introduce ourselves and who we all are and what our roles are here this afternoon. I'm Provost Drew Mackenzie. I don't normally chair this particular meeting, but Councillor Curley, who does, has declared a view on the subject prior to this meeting and therefore negates himself from taking the chair. So that's why I'm sitting in for him this afternoon. Peter?
Yeah, I'm Peter MacDonald for the Head of Legal and Democratic Services.
Councillor James Daisley, Inverclyde South West Ward.
And Councillor Sandra Reynolds for Inverclyde West Ward 5.
I'm Councillor Kirsty Law. I'm not part of this, as I said to you, but I'm just here to give a view.
Yeah.
I'm Claire Jameson, but I work as Dr. Claire Thorman and I'm at Dr. McCartney's practice in Port Glasgow Health Centre.
Thank you. Mr. Jameson.
Stuart Jameson for Environment and Generation for News.
Gordon Leach, I'm team leader for the Woods. Graham Brooks, Councillor Inverclyde North. Paul Cassidy, Councillor Inverclyde South West.
And looking in on the screens there are various council officers. When you come to speak there's a button in front of you on the microphone, and that will allow us to hear you better in here, but particularly the people on the screen will hear you better. Item 2 on the agenda, the petitions update report. Mr. MacDonald.
So this really is simply a report to update the members on petition previously held before this committee. And the one outstanding matter that we're coming back to yourselves on was a petition regarding the maintenance of the Purn Drive on one-way system. And various steps that officers had to go through in relation to that before they could bring it before the substantive committee by regeneration. And they are presently seeking to progress the necessary traffic surveys, I might for Gordon to correct me if I'm wrong here, before they can bring a further report back to environment regeneration. And so obviously members will be updating that through reporting to environment regen, so we're then proposing to bring any further updates to this committee on that matter.
Thank you, Mr. MacDonald. That was for noting. Councillor Brooks?
I just asked the proxy member the timing on when that will get to you now.
Mr. Jimison? Mr Leach.
No, I can't give you a time frame on that at the moment. Sorry, the consultant has just started work on the traffic study in the whole of Upper Europe, so I can't give you a time frame on that at the moment. Sorry.
Thank you. Any other questions on this item? Can we note the recommendations?
Great.
Thank you. Item 3 on the agenda is the 4th Street car parking charges. Mr MacDonald, would you like to summarise?
If I can just do a quick run of what our rules of procedure are for this, as much for the elected members here as different, because these are just slightly different committees in the hold. So the rules were approved by this Petition Committee on the 15th of June 2017. They're designed to encourage discussion, reduce formalities, and provide a fair hearing for all concerned. The hearing will take form of discussion led by the convener, based on the committee report that you have in front of you, the supplementary written submissions that we have from the petitioner, and the oral representations made by the petitioner and council officers at this meeting. The petitioner, the appropriate council officers, and any board members may speak to the committee on the petition. In this instance, we have Dr. Thorman here as a petitioner, we have Councillor Law here as a board member, and we have Stuart Johnson here as our Interim Director of Environment and Regeneration, who will be speaking for the road services under his remit, and Mr. Leach here to answer any questions that come his way as well. I will read out a brief summary of the petition shortly, and I'll ask you just to confirm that to tie in with what you were anticipating. Each speaker will then be given an initial period of up to 5 minutes to make representations to the committee. The order will be Mr. Johnson as the council officer first, Dr. Thorman as the petitioner second, Councillor Law as a ward member third. Then the council officer will be given an opportunity to pick up on any matters raised by either of the two speakers without any introducing any new material, again for a maximum of 5 minutes. And then finally, the petitioner will be invited to deal with any matters that have been raised and to sum up the petition, again limited to 5 minutes and not introducing any new material. The committee will then proceed to consideration of this petition in the way that they ordinarily would in terms of the standing orders, and that may well involve questions through the provost to the petitioner or the council officers present. It's important to note that any board member who speaks to the committee in the above process will not be entitled to participate in decision making for a member of the committee. It's also important to note that any member who has prior to consideration of this petition made it clear that he or she is either for or against the petition will not be entitled to participate. This is essential to ensure the petition is given a fair and proper hearing and avoid any impression of bias in relation to the council's commission decision making processes. So, Dr. Conlon, I can just turn to your petition. I think it's enough to summarise it. So, as at 3rd October 2022, parking charges will be applied at 4th Street, Port Glasgow. There will be free parking for up to 3 hours, and then £2 a day beyond that 3 hours. This long-stay car park has always been free to park and services the local community and businesses nearby, including Port Glasgow Health Centre. These changes unfairly affect staff of the nearby businesses and the health centre who are providing vital services to the community of Port Glasgow. We are petitioning Inverclyde Council to reconsider charges on this car park, subject to any statutory consultations, as the impact on staffing and future staffing of these services could be greatly impacted by this change.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr MacDonald. Before we start with the proceedings, the role of this committee today is to decide one of two things. We either decide the issue raised has enough merit to merit further action, and remit that to the head of shared services, roads, environmental services, to bring a report to the Environment Regeneration Committee with recommendations on the matter, or the committee can reject the petition and bring matters to an end. It's one decision or the other. Mr Jimson, would you like to put the council's views here?
Props to you. Decriminalised parking enforcement was first introduced within Inverclyde in 2014 after the traffic warden service was removed from private lease in 2011. This removal led to inconsiderate and illegal parking, and numerous complaints were received about the lack of parking space across our town centres. Port Glasgow members will recall the frustration of the public not being able to park in Port Glasgow in the town centre after 9 o'clock, simply because the morning commuters and business staff had filled up all the spaces. To improve the choice of parking in our town centres was agreed by the Environment Regeneration Committee on the 29th of August 2019 to introduce charging in our town centre car parks. I quote from the report. Managing the provision of car parking and increasing turnover is a recognised tool to improve access to town centre businesses and facilities, support the economy and reduce the frustration of visitors. An effective charging policy deters long-stay parking close to town centres and frees up space for short-stay car parking, which is useful to customers and is economically advantageous. It was proposed to introduce parking charges within the car parks at Kenbrook Street, both east and west, Shore Street, Port Glasgow, 4th Street, Port Glasgow, Princes Street, Port Glasgow, Lochwinnock Road, Kilmacombe, with a total number of spaces of 553. The car parks identified are in the walking proximity of the town centres, and the charging will encourage turnover and improve access to business and facilities. An effective charging policy deters long-stay parking close to town centres and frees up space for short-stay parking, which is helpful to customers and is economically more advantageous. Port Glasgow Town Centre has a range of availability within the town centre. In terms of 1 hour on-street, 94 spaces with 9 disabled. On-street, restricted, 50 spaces. Off-street, 232 spaces for regular parking, 12 spaces for disabled, 6 electric vehicles, and 21 private spaces. 2 hours free is 42 spaces for regular, 6 for disabled, 4 for electric, and 6 for private. And free all day is 156, with 9, 2, and 0. Charging restrictions would have been implemented in 2020, however, they were delayed because of the pandemic until April 22. And it was further extended using anti-COVID money until October 22 to aid the town centre recovery. Both interventions were about protecting the town centres. Moving on to 4th Street. 4th Street car park within the council's control has 2 elements. The main car park and the barriered area which is contained within the CMA lease. In addition, NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde have a car park with 27 spaces. Due to the location of the car park, a large proportion of the short-stay usage is for visitors to the health centre, the library, and the nearby pharmacy. These visitors may be elderly, infirm, or disabled and may have reduced mobility and require access to the available town centre car parking spaces, as well as the health centre. Following the 2 periods of COVID interventions, the car park charging was introduced, and the terms for the car park are 0 to 3 hours free, and all-day parking was £2. There are alternative locations for free car parking within the town centre. Probably the largest car park is at Highholm Avenue Park and Ride, which is approximately 400 to 500 metres from the town centre, depending on the route taken. And officers consider this to be reasonable. We're not looking at the car parking in Tesco because we believe that that's just a wee bit too far away in comparison to the health centre. It should be noted that the guidance supports the council's position that short-term parking encourages turnover in town centres and that free parking is within an acceptable distance, as I've already alluded to. Provost, there is a very real risk that this discussion will focus on a group of workers, which makes it very emotive. This policy has not been designed to be punitive in any form. To individuals, as has been alluded to, it is simply to stimulate activity in the town centres. Staff and long-stayers should look to more sustainable modes of transportation, as the bus station and the train stations are very close. And indeed, NHS Scotland state, as part of their response to the climate crisis, that they will become a net zero health service by 2040. In the active travel section within the NHS website, it states that the emissions from transport and travel are significant in a large organisation such as NHS GCC, particularly due to the vastness of our operational activities and services. NHS GCC are continuously encouraging sustainable travel by making staff and visitors aware of the various public transport links that are available to them. There are a variety of bus routes to the hospital sites and health centres as well as shuttle buses that link pedestrians to various hospital sites. The travel plan within the same website indicates that they are very positive on a cycle to work scheme, that they have been reviewing more bike storage, creating walking and national and cycling maps for each site, indicating links to the national cycle routes, promoting annual season tickets for public transport and looking into increasing the availability of discounted travel through working with SPT and other local transport providers. Finally, if the parking charges in this car park are removed, this may have an impact on the proposed council income and savings, which we need to address to ensure that there's no wider impact on county services. The estimated annual income from this car park with the charges currently applying is £22,500. Props, based on this, I cannot support the petitioner's request.
Thank you, Mr. Jimison. Dr. Thorman, would you now like to express the views of the petitioners? If you press the red button in front of you.
Right. So hi, I'm Dr. Thorman and I am one of the GPs within Port Glasgow Health Centre. I'm here representing mainly the members of the health centre and of the two local pharmacies at M&D Greens 4th Street and M&D Greens at John Wood Street. So I live within Quarriers and I am obviously here today. So on the 3rd of October, so just over a month ago, these new charges came into play. And while I do appreciate the council's desire to raise revenue from the car park and appreciate that these car parks aren't self-funding, they do require maintenance, the 4th Street car park has always been historically used primarily for the health centre. It opens off into the health centre there. Having worked and gone around Port Glasgow, I've never had issues with parking up until the 3rd of October. And that is visiting the town centre of Port Glasgow. And I don't think many of us will have struggled in the past to have parked easily within Port Glasgow Health Centre. What's happened? So there's a few issues that we do want to discuss as staff, and obviously we appreciate that we are just a small proportion of the people of Port Glasgow, but we also want to reflect our patients of Port Glasgow as well. On a financial point of view, it is £2 a day. That charge is minimal on a day-by-day basis. If you add that up for our full-time members of staff, that's 5 days a week at £10 over the cost of a year. That's asking our receptionists, our practice managers, our podiatrists, an extra £520 each approximately over that year if they were to have to park in that space. I noticed you'd mentioned that there was 27 NHS parking staff. Many of us don't live within walking distance of Port Glasgow Health Centre. I'm approximately 10 miles away. And most of our staff do this. Some will come from Port Glasgow. We've got Greenock, Gura, Queens Bay and staff coming from Glasgow. We can't be asking, there is not. I'm out in Quarriers Village this day. However much I would love to travel to work by bus or cycle, unfortunately it isn't feasible. So within us, we cover an area that practice of 50 square miles. We cover a patient population of the patients within the 3 practices there of 12,000 patients. We also cover Port Glasgow Medical Centre for the treatment centre, the podiatrists. That puts us up to nearly 15,000 patients this health centre covers. These patients do come and go over the year. Like you'd said before, many of them are disabled, they will have mobility issues. We do need to have easy and accessible parking for them. On a day-by-day basis, any one of us may be asked to go out and visit patients. This may be 1 mile, 2 miles, 3 miles away. We know that there is the bike around work. As a GP, I carry a lot of kit with me. I carry medications. Our practice nurses will have end-of-life equipment. They will have controlled drugs. Asking our nursing staff to travel around by bikes in the current climate in Port Glasgow and in all weathers, it isn't unfortunately feasible on a day-by-day basis for us. Port Glasgow Health Centre, we struggle like many of the NHS with recruitment issues. We have vacancies within the health centre that we have struggled to recruit. We have struggled to recruit for over 12 months. We have real fears that the addition of parking, that when we do have people coming in, if there are two options for members of staff, one of which does not incur the difficulties with parking, that we are once again going to be at a disadvantage trying to recruit new members of staff to our practices. We know Port Glasgow is an area of high deprivation. We know it is an area of high health needs. This is just going, we fear that this is going to further extrapolate the health inequalities that we already face within Port Glasgow in comparison to other practices that do have easier parking and also have freestyle parking available to staff. Just to sort of go through who we have in the health centre, there are the 3 GP practices. Each GP practice will have doctors, nurses, admin staff and managerial staff working with them. We have a podiatry department, a treatment room which has staff nurses and health assistants. We have our health visitor team, district nurses, link workers, physiotherapists, social workers, the community learning disability team and the health improvement team, plus the health centre managerial staff. At any given time, we estimate that we have 100 members of staff coming and going from this building. Like I'd said, they go out and we deliver care at patients' home, out in the community and within the health centre. Our staff are coming and going. Like I said before, this isn't an option. This is fundamental to the care that the health centre provides to the people of Port Glasgow. There are a finite number of spaces available to the health centre. We have 27 spaces. This is covering the 100 members of staff that are coming and going throughout the day. This is only a fraction needed to provide adequate parking to the staff within the health centre. And this is then forcing our employers into other areas. What's happened with the addition of parking is we now have inappropriate parking. I did mean to bring pictures and I apologise that I forgot. I would say on a daily basis, our managerial staff are having to send out emails to all the members in the health centre asking for cars to be moved. Yesterday, I was driving into the GP on call space and a patient didn't want to park. The car park for the council fee was entirely empty. There was 5 cars in the parking. However, they piled into the staff and visitors parking, which is this 27 spaces. The car was abandoned in the wee narrow road into the health centre. I was behind it, it was blocked. I did ask the member to go. She said she was collecting a prescription. The patient ran in, collected the prescription and drove off again. That meant I sat outside the health centre for 5 minutes waiting for her to move a car. 27 other cars would have been trapped within. This is happening on a daily basis, and it is this difficulty that unless you're within the health centre, the people coming and going from that car park, servicing that area. If an ambulance, this is blocking, so the way that it sits is we have Newark Health Centre to the back, which is where the NHS staff parking is. If an ambulance had needed to come in to get to a patient at Newark Health Centre, it wouldn't have been able to access. There would have been a delay while we would have identified the member of the public who had the car that is abandoned in that space. We're also having issues with double parking, so cars aren't able to get out. Our district nursing colleagues are trying to get out to do dressings. They're looking after our housebound, our palliative patients. They are having to go around the health centre, finding owners of cars to ask them to move. Historically, the area that has been allocated for NHS staff is not just used by NHS staff. People that live in the surrounding buildings are also using it to park. What we're finding out of those 27 spaces, half of them are being used by residents of Port Glasgow and their family. These spaces are then leaving a further reduction in parking for the staff when we arrive. Yesterday, we had an issue with an NHS delivery lorry. A car had parked up on the pavement, it blocked the access, so the lorry, there's a picture and I can provide it. We could not open the doors at the back of the building to allow the lorry to deliver things and supplies to the NHS. This would have been dressings, medications, equipment needed for our day-to-day work. This is obviously adding to staff stress levels as we turn up, we're arriving. It is providing an added difficulty. Coming to the actual addition of the parking, the 3-hour parking signage is very small and minimal. We are finding that a lot of visiting health staff aren't aware of it. This 3-hour free parking, it is not clear that patients need to get a ticket. Oh, sorry, it's
You
not.
just sum up shortly.
Yep. They don't know that they need a ticket to park. So there's a lack of sufficient signing. There's also one single parking meter. This parking meter is only coin operated. Again, the inconvenience in an era where coins have been put out of service, mainly due to COVID. There's no card or app facility for us to use. This is also coming off the back of the reduction in parking at 4th Street, as a significant proportion of this car park was sold off to Caledonian Maritime Assets in 2020, which would have raised revenue for the council. To summarise, that there are issues with parking. We are coming across it daily as members of staff. Yesterday, I noted that the car park meter was actually already, after 1 month, not working, and it wasn't. That adds to stress. We have patients who come in, they're in crisis and they're vulnerable, adding to their stress that their GP practice is trying to hit them with parking tickets. We know everybody is stressed, we understand the financial pressures. We feel that this is putting a burden on staff. We do fear the effects it will have on the health centre going forward. We also can see already the stress it causes to our patients coming in and out. So thank you for your consideration today.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Thornton. I now go to our ward councillor, Councillor Law. Would you like to?
Firstly, I'd like to say I understand the reasons for your petition. I'm personally uncomfortable that we've spent the past couple of years clapping our key workers, and then to top that off with a cost of living crisis that we're in now, to ask people to have these extra expenses, it's not ideal. I do understand Stuart made some really compelling points relating to like net zero targets and providing access so people can come and go in the town centre, and compared it to other car parks obviously around the area. But the car park that we're talking about specifically is basically a health centre car park. It's what I've always known it as. I can sometimes get lucky if I'm going to the chippy and find a space in it previously, but generally it was for people going in and out of the health centre. So and the nature of the staff that worked there, I know I had an aunt that's a district nurse that worked out of there, and she was in and out, in and out, in and out all day. I've had representations on this issue more than anything else since I've become a councillor, and most people are objecting to the charges. I do understand, having had discussions with other ward councillors, about there's other car parks 5 minutes walk away. But again, given the nature of the staff and how they have to maybe respond to certain situations, I really sympathise, and I understand that the extra charges are not ideal in this situation, and especially if you're seeing an empty car park now because of it, when you're describing the struggles that you're all experiencing. So personally I don't have a vote on this, but I would like us to consider all possibilities and not just reject this petition outright.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Law. I will now go back to Mr. Jemison, where he will reply to points that have been raised. Mr. Jemison, you have 5 minutes. I know that I'll let you speak on, and also to the petitioner. 5 minutes introducing no new material. Mr. Jemison.
Through you, Provost. As I've already stated, my concerns with the petition are all about staff room. we all value, I'm sure we all value the work that the NHS Greater Glasgow and carried out. And nor are we suggesting that the staff group who are going out to clients go in their bikes. We need to be absolutely clear about that, but recognising, as Mrs Johnson said, that there are a number of different users within the health centre. Some of them are in all day, some of them are not in all day, and it's that churn that we're looking at. So we believe that the 0 to 3 hours is available for those people whose Councillor Ross suggested is coming and going in and out all day. So there is provision for that type of activity. My concern is that, and Mrs Johnson has said on a number of occasions that there is inappropriate use within the health centre car park. Now, the health centre car park doesn't come under the remit of the council, but if it were a means to address the concerns which have been raised here today, the council could do something about it through traffic regulation orders, whereby there could be enforcement contained within that car park. And that would perhaps address the blocking in, the inappropriate use, the residence parking, etc. The petitioner has talked about the fact that that this would place a greater burden on recruitment, but recognising that with the recruitment issues that exist within the NHS and indeed within the council, we had a period of 3 years where there were no charges apparent within the car parks, and there were still recruitment issues that prevailed. So you can understand that to be saying that this is going to make it worse, that I would suggest that that's conjecture. Coming back to the car park, the NHS car park, I would suggest that there needs to be prioritisation, because I visited the car park this morning at 9 o'clock and the NHS car park was full. And the 4th Street car park wasn't full. So are all the people who are getting in early, are they using that car park in order for them to be able to get out to service patient needs, or are they just getting in early? With regards to the 3-hour parking signage, the car park does comply with the standards that are set out for parking. So as you drive into the car park, there's a large sign on your right hand side which identifies the car parking charges, both in terms of the time and the hours. We accept that there could be additional signage that could be provided, and that signage has been ordered to make it clearer than it currently is. With regards to the parking meter, officers were not aware that the parking meter wasn't working, and clearly if the parking meter's not working, it's difficult to enforce anything. And finally, can I just clarify, there was a land transaction that took place with regards to CMAL. The car park has, the project that created the space for CMAL paid for the car park extension. You'll recognise it's an irregular shape. So that car park was created using European structural funds to refit the upper floor at Port Glasgow Library. So there wasn't a transaction. However, as part of CMAL's lease, there is activity there. I've got nothing further than that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Jimson. Now it goes back to the petitioner, Dr. Thorman. You have 5 minutes to summarise your thoughts. 5 minutes, please, without introducing any new material. Dr. Thorman.
So I'm not really sure what else I've got to add. I think the suggestion of adding in parking restrictions and warranting that, it seems as though we have patients and staff members that are financially pressured. They are parking in these spaces for need. It would suggest that hitting them with parking fines, while it may fix some of the issues, it doesn't address that the 27 spaces allocated for a health centre of this size are adequate. The potential to increase the number available to staff, looking at alternative means. Like we said already, this isn't a health centre, that there are car parks that are free at High Holme Street. that are easier, that are free, that service the town centre. This car park is at the bottom of the hill to the town centre. This car park, it services Port Glasgow Health Centre. It allows patients to get to their pharmacy and seek treatment. 3 hours free parking, coming and going. Our staff are coming and going all the time. What happens is at 3 hours, you can't put your licence plate in again. Your licence plate maxes out. So to go for a second time, you're actually staying for 6 hours. I can't walk out every 3 hours and get a free parking ticket for my car. If our district nurses come and go, they've used their 3 hours. When they return, they need to go in, and this is where they are parking in behind when people are running in and out. Again, we can't have our nursing staff who do carry controlled drugs walking 5 minutes down a hill through Port Glasgow. I do think we really, really need to look at just the safety logistics of all of this, the benefits to our patients, and just to sort of how we operate as a health centre. I also heard in the very first one that there was a number of car parks that were covered, and one of them was mentioned in Kilmacombe. I do understand that there's been a decision not to put parking fees into Kilmacombe for an alternative reason. So I do understand that the council do take actions on this, and I understand that the decision behind this would be that the effect of the parking on Kilmacombe as a village would not be relevant. And I would say that the parking at 4th Street Park does not affect Port Glasgow town centre. There is a bigger car park up at High Holme Street, and I do feel that we really need to focus on this car park servicing the health centre.
Thank you, thank you, Dr. Thorne. Now I will proceed to normal committee procedures, where I would invite the members of the Petitions Committee to address questions either to Dr. Thorne or to Mr. Jackson. The floor is open. Great.
Thanks so much, Ross. Yeah, I've got 3 questions. I think they're all to Mr. Jimison. Yeah, just for clarity, actually, some of the questions that are for clarity. Firstly, do we have any information on the parking spaces in the Greenock Health and Care Centre, which obviously is an equivalent understanding it's a bigger town? So we see that there's 27 in Port Glasgow Health Centre. Do we have any information available about how many we have in the Greenock Health and Care Centre, which is obviously newly built and in theory built for purpose, just to get an understanding of parity? Secondly, could I have some more narrative on the 27 spaces and the CalMARC spaces, or CMAL spaces, sorry. So there's 27 spaces that are NHS. Are they, is that land owned by the council? Have we gifted it to NHS? Is it, just help me understand what those 27 spaces, the ownership and the responsibility of those 27 spaces. Here, obviously, we could do a traffic order on it, but I don't understand how we do that. We don't own the space, but I'm sure clever people than me can understand that. And also on the CMAL, so Mr. Jimson has said about how CMAL, that was used by alternative taxpayer money, it wasn't a transfer. So how's that in space? How the public not in that space? Is there a gate for it? Is there a barrier? How do CMAL control this parking space? So that's a question around the actual parking spaces there. And finally, if a traffic order, as that's been suggested, was to be made for the 27 spaces in NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde, would that have to come back to environmental regeneration? Because that is actually option A within the Petition Committee. Or could officers simply put a traffic order in place for those 27 spaces without the E&R Committee having sight of it?
Thank you, Councillor Brooks. Mr. Johnson.
So you brought us thinking 4 there. There is a difference, there's a significant difference between Greenock Health Centre and Port Glasgow in the form that the car park owned by Greenock Health Centre is under the control of the NHS. So it's a similar situation whereby there's the NHS car park at 4th Street, but the number of spaces, and I can't tell you the exact number, but the number of spaces at Greenock is far higher than 27, but also recognising that the Greenock Health Centre is not in a town centre location, So therefore, it has to have its own dedicated car parking spaces. And from a planning perspective, the 4th Street Health Centre falls under town centre, and you look at the overall number of car parking spaces within the area. So we're not comparing apples with apples from a town centre perspective versus non-town centre perspective. And obviously,
that working at Greenock Town Health Centre, it is about 200 plus spaces to Greenock Health Centre to the 27, and I understand that they're different ownership, but you are looking at over 200, so 10 times the spaces for their staff and patients.
and I can't argue with
That's an
that,
estimate,
thank you
but-
for that clarification, but you recognise Port Glasgow Health Centre was built a long time ago. It was built on the car park that was the council's car park, and there was dedicated spaces made available to it. With regards to the 27 spaces, I'll defer to Mr. Leach, and then I'll come back, or rather, I'll answer your question with regards to CMAL, and CMAL spaces are barred. Mr. Leach.
Sorry, I didn't write down 27 places, but can you give me a wee resume of that?
Who owns that 27 space? Is it council land? Is what about the upkeep if there's a hole that we pay for it?
No, it's all NHS, it's all within their bounds, so I'm going to assume we're looking at the maps, the historical maps, as Mr. Jameson said, the car park, the council car park was there before the health centre was built, so I'll take a bit of assumption that it was probably built for the swimming pool and the town hall were in there. Then they built the health centre and they've got that part of the ground beside them with the 27 spaces, with all within their control.
My final question is the traffic order, does it have to go back to ENR?
I think under the new policy, if there's no objections to it, then no. If there is objections to it, then yes. So yes and no.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brooks. Councillor Daisley.
Thanks, Provost. A couple of basic questions for Mr. Jameson. First of all, how many total car park spaces are there? And apologies if I've missed that, but just for clarity. And how was the 22,500 annual revenue worked out? Like, what was the maths behind that?
Through Provost, to defer to Mr. Leach in both of those questions.
So 90 spaces in the car park, and the charging was £2 a day over 50 spaces for however many weeks a year. 50, I think it was 50 weeks a year. It's actually in the other committee report. I'm trying to go off the top of my head here, but that's roughly what it was 5 days a week. So I think we're only assuming that half the spaces are built. So we assume that the majority of the spaces would be the 3 hours free to get that turnover for staff, for patients, for shoppers.
Thanks, thank you. And question to Dr. Thorman then. In your view, given that Mr. Leach just said that that's half the spaces are being filled, do you think that's realistic? Is that happening?
I think that's a gross overestimate of what's happening. You did mention that you turned up at 9 o'clock. An average GP is turning up around about 8 AM till 8:30, as are most of our staff. I would estimate that the car park's got maybe 10 to 15 cars in it over the month. And this is in obviously the month of October, so it is winter and rainy. Those cars tend to be coming and going short term, so they're using the free parking. I would estimate of the long haul car parking, if you're making £10 a day out of 4th Street car park, that would be optimistic. At 360 days, I estimate you're realistically going to be making about 3,500 off that car park in parking fees, which I think 22,000 is a gross overestimate of what that car park can give you.
Mr. Jameson.
Through the Provost, recognising Councillor Daisley that we've just reintroduced car parking charges within a number of car parks within the cloud. It's safe to say that there have been a number of obviously when the car parks were free, they were being oversubscribed, so you couldn't get a space by 10 o'clock in the bull ring, for example. There was a reaction to the introduction of car parking spaces, and for a number of the weeks within the bull ring, the number of cars that were in it, you could probably talk about 25 to 30% occupancy, but that's starting to climb, and it's probably about 75% in the bull ring. by mid-afternoon. So it's not about it being there at the beginning of the day. Clearly during the free parking, people made hay, and that was appropriate for people to make hay. But with the reintroduction, people have reacted with their feet and are walking from further out. But there's certainly a recovery within the income streams within certainly the greener ones, and we would anticipate. You'll understand we're being asked to make assumptions where we don't know for sure what the likely activity levels are going to be. But remembering that particular car park is dual role, whereby it's 0 to 3 free and thereafter charge. So we would anticipate that it would come up.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Jamieson. Councillor Dayton.
Provost, if I can continue,
Yes,
is that okay? Thanks for those answers there. I've got a question which, I mean, I don't know if it's not appropriate for now, then please let me know. But it's for Mr. Jamieson. Are there any alternatives or compromises that could be introduced that kind of sit well with both parties, or has that been thought of and considered already?
For you, Provost? To be honest, no. Because simply we have the petition before us, we've got to react to the petition.
Yeah.
It's evident to me, however, that the management of the NHS car park, as Dr. Foreman has indicated, does leave something to be desired. And that's something that we happily work with our colleagues in the NHS Greater Glasgow about to see if there's something that we could do with regards to that. But today's petition is about travel.
Mr. Dayton.
Yes, I'm going to keep going. I've got a final question, okay? So I know we already compared Greenock with Port Glasgow Health Centres, but I would like to know if there are any other comparative examples in Inverclyde where a facility like this has been adjoined to a car park like that. You know, they're kind of married together, and then we're asking to then change the DNA of that relationship. And introduce car parking charges and stuff like that? Or is this the first one? Is there a precedent been set before?
Mr. Jones.
So Reece is taking that.
No, there's not. I suppose if you think of any town centre with any business, it's the same scenario with any council car park. Do you know what I mean? If I pick any car park in any of the town centres, I suppose any business could come and say, "Oh, do you know what? We get staff in there, we can park." So it's the same. It's the same no matter where you are, no matter what you are. So no, there's not one that I can think of across Inverclyde where it's the same.
Thank you.
Thanks, Provost.
Finish, Councillor Disney.
No, I would like to. I think if I can just make a statement. I think that given the answers that I've heard, certainly, I think it remains ambiguous. I think there's no precedent being set. I think there are no alternatives or compromises being offered or discussed at the moment. And one of the points that Mr. Jameson made, and rightly so, and I do agree, is that it's not about a staff group. It's not about punitive actions against the NHS or things like that. But to me, it's unavoidable, and that is happening. That is exactly what's happening, and it doesn't sit right with me. So I would like to move that we take it to ENR.
Thank you, Councillor Disney. Is there anybody else, another councillor wishing to say anything? Councillor Reynolds?
Yeah, I would agree with James Daisley and move to ENR. I know this is about charges, but I do have a comment and agree with the management of the NHS car park, which is really out with our control. If there's 100 staff in 27 spaces, then perhaps the management of the health centre could look about permits or some way of managing it for priority staff. Portrait spaces for 100 people. There are people there that are able to walk, that are not carrying equipment. You know, maybe that should be looked at as well as managing that car park themselves in a more efficient way. At the same time, I have complete sympathy for that. I've used that car park multiple times before over the last 6 years, and always found difficulty in parking in that car park when I'm visiting pharmacies or going into the department there. Find it very, very difficult to park.
I totally agree with you. I've been to the health centre to give blood, and I totally agree with you. Every time I've been there, I can't get a space. So I think if you remove the charges, then that's what you get.
You go back to that and
I think that's what we go back to, and it's these patients that we should be thinking about. Never mind the staff. It's the patients and it's the elderly. That's where we should be going.
That's my point. If I can't park there, how did patients park beforehand?
I think they found it really difficult. I think that's the whole crux of the matter. I think they find it really difficult to park, because I've found it difficult to
And
park.
I think this is sorry, proposed to you. I think that's why we have to put it back to environment and regeneration.
Thanks, Councillor Reynolds. Now, I've had a motion from Councillor Daisley that this is taken to the next step and is remitted to the Head of Shared Services, Roads and Environmental Services, to bring a report to the Environment and Regeneration Committee. Is there anybody otherwise minded with this? Then I declare that's what we'll do. I thank Dr Thurman for bringing this petition to the Council, and it has now passed through this committee and will now go forward to the next stage to be submitted to the Regeneration Environment Committee. Thank you so much. Thank you all for your attendance today and your contributions. Thank you.
Well, actually,